I think it's amazing that so many people could come out and just live their truth as a marketable demographic.
For sure, and they really made it like a safe place for everybody, I think, for us too.
Yeah, 100%. It's like, here I am, I'm queer, I have a debit card.
Hi, I'm Cece, and welcome to my channel, and happy Pride Month, everybody. Today, I want to talk about rainbow capitalism and the commodification of pride, and basically how everyone nowadays is just jumping at the chance to cash in on this social movement. Pride marches have gone from protests to these sort of shiny, materialistic, very often corporate-sponsored events that we have today. A lot of mainstream stores now release a Pride collection every June and enthusiastically announce their very, very genuine, not at all profit-motivated support for the LGBTQ plus community. And I have thoughts. So I've seen this trend very broadly referred to as rainbow capitalism. Odds are you've seen that term floating around the internet lately. There's no one definition of rainbow capitalism because it's kind of a new slang internet term, but I found a few definitions that I like and I think are helpful in discussing it. From Urban Dictionary, a scholarly source, rainbow capitalism is the action of companies pretending to support LGBTQ plus communities and or specifically making merchandise for more profit. I think I like this definition the best. It's from the University of Technology, Sydney. Also known as pink capitalism, rainbow capitalism is the act of major corporations targeting the queer community and those that support it in order to cash in. You may remember that Target was one of the first stores to launch a full Pride-themed collection. I could not find for sure whether it was the first store to launch one and to really actively try and cash in on this, but it was definitely one of the first. Target launched its annual Pride collection in June of 2013, which was a full 2 years before the US even legalized gay marriage. And at the time, it felt like kind of a big deal. I remember I was like, 17 at the time? And it was like, wow, this is pretty cool and pretty symbolic that a major corporation is taking this visible of a stance on gay rights. However, like I said in one of my earlier videos, companies generally do not make decisions out of the goodness of their hearts. They generally make decisions that are motivated by profit and what they think is going to make them the most money. I don't think the CEO of Target was like, wow, it would just mean so much to my gay nephew and to LGBT people everywhere if we were to make a Pride collection. More likely than that, they just noticed that the LGBT community and its allies were a growing, marketable demographic just waiting to be tapped into, and they could be on the front end of that and make a shit ton of money. Since 2013, kind of a lot has changed. I would say that generally as a society, we've come a really long way, even in the last 8 to 10 years when it comes to LGBT equality, representation, and just general acceptance and support. The US Supreme Court legalized gay marriage nationwide in 2015. That was obviously a really big turning point. We've seen increasing, and I would say probably more importantly, increasingly positive and nuanced representation of LGBT people in the media. For years and years, gay and trans people were portrayed in TV and movies as either these really stereotypical one-dimensional comedic relief characters, or as the butt of jokes, or as just straight up punchlines of really, really bigoted jokes.
Don't you have a little too much penis to be wearing a dress like that?
That's definitely changing, thankfully. So on the positive side, it's a definite sign of the times that LGBT people now have enough visibility and social capital that companies are even recognizing them as a demographic worth pandering to. An October 2020 poll found that 70% of all Americans now support same-sex marriage, which is an all-time high. I'm gonna be honest, I read that and I was like, only 70%? But okay, in the grand scheme of things and definitely in overall historical context, that's still pretty good. By the way, just some other stats that I found interesting from this poll. Only 50% of Republicans support same-sex marriage. I don't like saying same-sex marriage. That felt icky coming out of my mouth. I think it reminds me of when homophobes say same-sex attraction as like a euphemism. Interestingly, support for gay marriage among white evangelicals actually decreased in the past few years from 41% to 34%, and support for marriage equality was highest among religiously unaffiliated Americans, 90% of whom support it. I want to know what reason that 10% of non-religious Americans have for opposing gay marriage. Are they just straight up like, yeah, I think two guys kissing is icky? Anyway, that was a tangent. As I was saying, this level of support for the LGBTQ plus community is apparently good enough for corporations to look at them and their allies and say, okay, this is now the majority of Americans. We better start actively trying to sell shit to them. How do you do, fellow gays? So the pandering and the probably insincere, profit-motivated support is not that great, but the social conditions and the cultural climate that led companies to start doing the pandering in the first place is pretty great, if you ask me. Now for the downsides to all this. So my very early half-formed thesis for this video was basically like, okay, so companies giving insincere support to try and turn a profit is not the best, but that's at least preferable to companies like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A that actively work to do harm to the LGBT community. However, after doing like 5 minutes of research for this video, that thesis went entirely out the window. I was disappointed but not really surprised to find out that a lot of companies do both. They sell rainbow merchandise during Pride Month and post messages of support and then turn around and do things like donate to viciously anti-gay politicians the rest of the year. AT&T, for example, currently has this cute Pride-themed Twitter banner, but in 2020, they donated over $56,000 to Mitch McConnell's re-election campaign. American Airlines did the same thing. They donated over $46,000 to McConnell's campaign last year. This was while McConnell was still Senate Majority Leader and he was actively blocking the Equality Act. The Equality Act would simply extend the protections of the 1964 Civil Rights Act to cover discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Something that I think is really illustrative of just how much big companies have taken over Pride is the fact that in 2018, the lead sponsor of the Pittsburgh Pride March was EQT. If you don't know what EQT is, it is actually a fracking company. We love that. EQT has also consistently donated to anti-LGBT politicians. Are we seeing a pattern here? According to an article on the Daily Dot, in 2014, the corporation donated $14,000 to Republican State Rep Bill Schuster, who has voted to add a constitutional amendment limiting the state's definition of marriage to one man and one woman several times. Following the Supreme Court's 2015 decision to legalize same-sex unions across the U.S., he said in a press release that he was disappointed, claiming that a handful of activist judges attempted to destroy traditional marriage and legislate from the bench. EQT has also given more than $68,000 to Schuster's Republican colleague, Senator Tim Murphy, who has also repeatedly lobbied against marriage equality as a member of the Pennsylvania legislature. He has received a 0% rating from the Human Rights Campaign, the lowest possible score. So here are companies that are actively using their massive amounts of money and power to do real demonstrable harm to the LGBT community while simultaneously profiting off of this illusion of support that they put forth. It's fucked up and we shouldn't fall for it. You've probably heard the term greenwashing before, which is when companies use environmentalism or sustainability as a marketing strategy when their actual actions behind the scenes might not reflect those values. Similarly, this kind of faux support for the LGBT community is often referred to as rainbow washing or pink washing. Of course, we can't really control what corporations do and what heinous politicians they donate to, and they have way more money and power than any of us. But I do think it's worth it to put in just a little bit of effort to research where you're spending your money and what causes it might be going towards. The website progressiveshopper.com is a really good tool to see where corporations typically donate and what kinds of causes they typically support. You can search pretty much any corporation and it'll tell you whether or not they support progressive causes, what kind of political action committees they've donated to, a whole lot of other really helpful information. EQT is also not the only corporation to sponsor a Pride March. In fact, Pride marches and celebrations in many cities have become so corporate that activists are actually organizing alternative non-corporate Pride marches. Most of the articles I could find on this were from 2019, since Pride was canceled last year due to the pandemic. 2019 also happened to be the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riot, so along with that, there is a growing movement to reclaim Pride. That kind of struck me because 50 years is really not that long ago. There are plenty of people alive today who remember Stonewall and who lived through it, and I just can't imagine watching the birth of this movement and getting to see all the amazing progress that's been made, but also having to watch it in many ways be watered down and profited off of by those same powers that were doing the oppressing in the first place. The fight for equality is very much not over. Have we come a long way? Yes. Do LGBT people in other countries have it a lot worse? Yes. Do gay and queer and gender nonconforming people have complete equality in America? Fuck no. Trans people are still far more likely to experience homelessness in their lifetimes. Just this year, we've seen a slew of anti-LGBT bills make their way through state legislatures across the country. So many that the Human Rights Campaign reported last month that 2021 is set to become a record-breaking year when it comes to the passage of anti-LGBT legislation. We, for some reason, are still fighting to pass the Equality Act. While a lot of states do have laws in place that prevent discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, 29 still do not, so this would be a really significant step forward in LGBT equality. According to a CBS News article from this month, 29 states do not have laws that explicitly shield LGBTQ Americans from discrimination, resulting in a patchwork of protections that vary from state to state. The Equality Act would extend protections to cover federally funded programs, employment, housing, loan applications, education, and public accommodations. That is some pretty basic stuff, but those protections are still not in place nationwide. Speaking of the Equality Act, it actually passed in the House back in 2019, and Mitch McConnell, who was then Senate Majority Leader, refused to even bring it to a vote. As I'm filming this, the most recent update I can find is that the Senate may vote on it this month. We're not really sure. I also forgot to mention that gay conversion therapy is still fully legal in 23 US states. This form of so-called therapy is cruel and abusive, and also it does not turn people straight. So there really is still real work to be done, and putting this kind of shiny rainbow party capitalist veneer over what pride is can actually really distract from that. A lot of mainstream corporate pride, whether this is explicitly said or not, reinforces this kind of attitude that's like, wow, it's so great you guys have all your rights now and we can party in the street in rainbow sequins. Buy a t-shirt.
Here I am. I'm queer. I have a debit card.
Rainbow logos and merchandise not only allow companies to get away with doing the bare minimum, or even worse, to distract from the harm that they're actually doing behind the scenes. They take money and attention away from small nonprofits and grassroots organizations that are often the ones actually on the ground doing the work and that really need support and donations. All of this being said, I complain about and criticize a lot of things on this channel, but I wanted to end this video on a happy note. I think looking at how much my country has progressed when it comes to LGBT rights in particular is one of the few things that makes me feel like a little bit hopeful for the future. As you guys maybe know, if you've watched a few of my videos, I grew up in a really, really small, conservative, homophobic town. There weren't really any out gay kids in my high school, like maybe one or two, but there was this avalanche of kids who came out after going to college or in the years after that, because I think we all knew it was just really not something that would have been accepted there. And I graduated in 2013. Like, this was not that long ago. Compared to now, I have friends who teach high school. I have a good friend who teaches at our old high school, actually. And their students' attitude just could not be more different. Just as a whole, they are so much more accepting of themselves and of each other and of each other's identities and orientation and whatever else. I don't know. I just think about that sometimes and it's like, okay, we are heading in the right direction in some ways. And before I end this video, I wanted to plug a local organization real quick in case you live in or near Richmond, because I know some of you guys have commented that you do. Diversity Richmond, they've been around since the 90s, I think, and they do a lot of really great work with the local community here. You can donate to them or you can volunteer. I'm going to link all their info down below. They are one of those small organizations that really needs our support. They also have a really amazing thrift store called Diversity Thrift. It's honestly just the best thrift store in Richmond, in my opinion, but all of the profits go to benefit this organization and the work they do. So if you like thrifting like me, you can just go shopping there and that'll help them out. You can also donate things like furniture and household goods. And yeah, that is all I have for you guys today, but thank you for watching and taking the time. I know I say thank you for watching in every single video, but it really does mean a lot to me that anyone wants to sit down and listen to what I have to say. I love you guys. Happy Pride. I hope that you are all getting vaccinated and staying safe as things are starting to open back up. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked this video. You can also follow me on my social medias. They will be linked in the description, and I will catch you guys in the next one.